Blunt is just the beginning. I mean, while we're on the discussion of Florida State, they also landed 2025, for now, three-star safety Ethan Pritchard. We can never tell. But over the weekend, they're currently in play for maybe some other targets. So who should we be tracking right now for the?
Yeah, they had a lot of blue chip prospects on campus in 2025 and 2026 as they try and get ahead for some of these primetime blue chippers moving forward. Three guys to highlight for you. You got Eastman, Georgia, Dodge County top 247 athlete Daryl Johnson, who told me Tallahassee's a vibe that nowhere else gives him. I think early in his process, Florida State is a program to definitely watch for him. Then you have top 247 safety Hilton Stubbs out of Jacksonville Mandarin, who just was very impressed with the way the defense was flying around, the way they play their young guys. Florida State's very high on his list early in the process. He's one of the most sought-after defensive backs in America. And then you have top 247 cornerback Onis Konanbanny out of Columbia, South Carolina. I think Florida State might lead for him early on. He said, who wouldn't want to play for Coach Pat Surtain? He said he thinks Coach Surtain is the best technical coach in the country at the position. But there were a lot of guys that are very excited about Florida State. It was another night game inside Doak. That atmosphere delivered. The second half where they absolutely suffocated Duke, pitched a shutout. Couldn't have done it in front of a better group of prospects. They've already landed a couple commits, and I think down the road they'll land a few more of these guys.
Steve, let's stay in the Sunshine State, and we mentioned it at the top of the show. Five-star defensive lineman L.J. McCray committing to the Florida Gators. They were able to beat out Auburn, Florida State, Miami, and Georgia. So how were they able to land this incredible in-state talent?
Well, I think consistency. You know, Coach Napier and his staff did a fantastic job of prioritizing LJ when they got to Gainesville. I'm not sure there was a program that recruited him harder. Now, he's been visiting Florida since middle school. You know, when he was on campus for a camp, and he told his dad in 8th grade that he wanted to be a Division I football player, thought he could do it, said that on the Florida campus, and now here he is. He's going to get to play his games inside the swamp. I think there were other programs that gave him a lot to think about at various points, from Georgia to Florida State. He had great relationships at Auburn. In Miami was swinging, but I think the relationships and consistency with Florida, but he also took his decision into his senior year for a reason. He wanted to see his finalists play some games. He went to the Florida-Tennessee game and saw the trajectory of the program starting to come together under Coach Napier and the second-year staff. He said that was a game where hardly anybody was picking Florida to win. Not only did they win, they dominated the balls. It was an awesome night inside the swamp, and I think that really helped ensure him that Florida was a program that was going in the right direction. He loves the recruiting class. It's the number 3 class in the country, and L.J. McCray is one of the most pivotal recruiting wins any program has had in this 2024 cycle, alongside DJ Lagway. Florida needed to hit big at quarterback this cycle. They get a potential franchise guy in 5-star DJ Lagway. They need to reshape this defense that's playing well this year, but they want more plays behind the line of scrimmage. This front 7 group that they have recruited is the best group in America as well. The Florida football arrow up on the way they're recruiting here in 2024. LJ McCray, what a major recruiting win.
Yeah, DJ and LJ, it just it makes a lot of sense. Promotional sense, too. I feel like you could have fun with that. LJ McCray, also one of our biggest risers in the latest rankings update. And speaking of risers, you mentioned it. Gators now up to number 3 in the team rankings. But, Steve, I doubt they're done. So what's left on the board for Florida?
Well, they want more guys that can help them win a national championship. You know, that's the standard in Gainesville. That's why Billy Napier took this job, and they are getting after it on the trail. There's a few more top targets for them. Xavier Bam Mincy is certainly one of the most coveted guys still on their board, LJ McCray's teammate. Now, Alabama's a program to watch there when you talk to the head football coach over there at Mainland, Coach Rowland. But Florida's been a mainstay in the recruitment there. You know, Michael Burrow is a guy that they had in the fold at one point. He decommitted. It looked like he was a trend towards Georgia when that happened. But he's been back to Gainesville. He's expected to be at the Florida-Georgia game this weekend. So maybe that's one that goes back in Florida's favor as they try and recruit more massive defensive linemen. They're obviously trying to flip some big timers too. Emily and Blair, none bigger than the #1 player in the country per 24/7 Sports, Jeremiah Smith. I think that's going to be tough sledding. Smith was back in Columbus this weekend. Another guy they're trying to flip is Jameer Grimsley, an Alabama commit, defensive back. He was back in Tuscaloosa this past weekend for that win over Tennessee. But Florida, they've been trying to flip him since the day he committed to Alabama as well. So they're in on some elite guys moving forward, probably some other ones out there. So you're going to want to stay tuned to Swamp 247 from now until that third Wednesday in December.
Steve, we are very, very, very close to spatula season. We all celebrate it. You love it. And another player that is on spatula watch, or could be on spatula watch, is Ellis Robinson, the #3 overall player in the 2024 class and the #1 defensive prospect in the class. He just visited Miami over the weekend. What's the latest you're hearing on that situation?
Well, he's been to Miami a few times since he committed to Georgia back in February on the 24/7 Sports Signing Day show. And I haven't heard anything to make me think that I have to get my spatula out here yet for Ellis Robinson. Look, he likes Miami. It was an opportunity for him to get to Coral Gables with some of his IMG Academy teammates that are super high on Miami that had some good visits, like Owusu Boateng, our #3 linebacker in the country, had a good visit there in the 2025 class. But Ellis Robinson, he's been up front with Georgia. Georgia knew that visit was happening. He gets back to Athens whenever he can. The relationship with Fran Brown, Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, and those guys, that's going to be as tough a flip as it's going to be for anyone to flip Jeremiah Smith.
Okay, the Tide with a huge win over rival Tennessee on Saturday. And just as that smoke cleared from the victory cigars, you put in a crystal ball for them to land 4-star athlete Daniel Hill. So what has you leaning that way after his visit?
The Cigar Bowl. Nothing like the Cigar Bowl in the third Saturday in October. Meridian High top 247 running back Daniel Hill. He's been to 3 Alabama games this year. He's been to Tuscaloosa as much as any prospect that's been recruited by Alabama has probably visited. And he said that he has never heard Bryant-Denny Stadium as loud as he heard it on Saturday. So he loved that atmosphere. Loved the way the offense made some adjustments. The track record at the position, just the proximity to home. His family loves it. And then I asked him afterwards if Alabama has emerged over Tennessee and South Carolina in this recruitment. And he was like, you could say a little bit. So there's still time for the Balls in South Carolina here to battle. But that's a current pulse pick. I think Alabama is the one to beat for Daniel Hill. We'll see if they can continue to hold off the Gamecocks and Vols as they try and add one of the most coveted running backs in the country. A young man that at 6'1", 225 pounds, can also be a big-time playmaker catching the football. Jahmyr Gibbs missed that element he brought to Alabama, something Daniel Hill could bring down the road.
And Daniel Hill wasn't the only prospect that made it down to Tuscaloosa this weekend. Steve, who were some other names that you were able to get a hold of that loved the environment down there in Alabama?
Well, you talk about spatula season. That starts with top 247 defensive lineman William Eccles out of Houston High there in Mississippi. He's committed to Ole Miss right now, but he loved the fans. He loved the way the defense pitched a shutout in the second half. He wants to get back for an official visit, but said the staff treating him with great hospitality and everything. So Alabama is certainly giving William Eccles a lot to think about. We already talked about Xavier Mincy. They're battling Florida, among others, for him. But then in the 2025 class, you got Zion Grady, the #2 edge in the top 247 in that junior class. I logged the 24/7 Sports Crystal Ball last week in favor of Alabama. A decision coming November 12th for the Charles Henderson High stand out there in Troy, Alabama. Always talks about the first-class facilities, first-class coaching staff, how they've developed outside linebackers and edge players. And then he just said it was crazy being there in Tuscaloosa. And then 2026, man, Alabama's got a great shot at a lot of these young sophomores that were there, from quarterback Jared Curtis, who's been a regular on campus. He's as coveted a passer as there is in America right now. He likes Georgia. He likes South Carolina. He likes Florida State. But Alabama just continues to impress him. And Coach Reese, getting to spend time with him was a highlight of his visit. The #1 or the number 2 offensive tackle in the top 247, Jackson Cantwell out of Nixa, Missouri. He's been making the rounds this fall to some of the biggest games in America, and he just loved that atmosphere in Tuscaloosa. Prior to the season, he mentioned Alabama as one of his early favorites, so nothing changed there. He's really clicked with Coach Wolford. You have the number 1 edge rusher in the top 247, Hezekiah Harris from in-state, who loves Alabama. They're going to be a major contender for him as well.
Let's head out west. Oregon hosting 5-star offensive tackle Jordan Seaton. The IMG product he's been pretty busy as the only uncommitted 5-star tackle. I'm pretty sure he took a visit to Alabama, the aforementioned team. But what did you learn out of his trip to Eugene?
Well, coming into the trip, Alabama was considered the favorite, with Florida and Tennessee giving him a lot to think about. Coming out of this Oregon unofficial, so it's his second unofficial, took one back in the summer. The Ducks are in fantastic position. Oregon had a big offensive performance, including over 250 yards rushing. Both running backs hit the century mark. He said, who wouldn't want to play in that scheme and get out and pull and block and let the running backs do their thing? He loves Coach Lanning. He loves the environment at Oregon. I think that they're in the middle of this. He said as much. So Oregon, as they try and work on a second straight top 10 class under Dan Lanning and company, they have a great chance to land Jordan Seaton, who's got a future visit locked in for Ohio State for the Michigan State game. Again, Alabama, Florida, and Tennessee right there. Colorado and Miami, a couple other contenders. But Oregon, the arrow is up in the recruitment of Jordan Seaton. And it's also up in the recruitment of top 247 edge Solomon Williams, who did take an official visit this weekend. He's going to go to the Alabama-LSU game, make his decision. Solomon Williams said Oregon's in his top 2 guys. Texas A&M also battling for that coveted pass rusher.
From Eugene to Columbus, let's stay in Big Ten country, Steve, and talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes after their big win against Penn State. They did it in front of several top recruits, including a couple that you have crystal ball predictions in: linebacker Eli Lee and offensive lineman Carter Lowe in the 2025 class. What's the buzz on the Buckeyes after a big weekend against Penn State?
Well, you guys keep bringing up spatulas in this segment, and I think if you look at top 247 defensive lineman Amaris Williams, who's a top 50 prospect in America in the 24/7 Sports Player Rankings, number 1 player in North Carolina, he's committed to Florida. But Ohio State got him in for an official visit this weekend, and talking to his mother, talking to people that spent time with Amaris, he absolutely loved the experience. Larry Johnson blew him and his family away, specifically because of his track record of putting guys in the NFL. But then those guys that are in the NFL come back to Columbus to spend time with Larry Johnson in the off season. So developer of men, they love the atmosphere. I think that we'll see where this visit high goes. But I think that they have given this Florida commit a lot to think about as they try and add to a recruiting class that ranks number 2 nationally. Ohio State's going to land a bunch of these juniors and sophomores that visited. None a bigger priority than Devin Sanchez, the 5-star cornerback from Houston, Texas, who's made multiple visits to the Buckeyes campus. Had a chance to talk to his dad after the visit. Bill Kurlick from Bucknuts spoke with Devin after the visit, talking to people that spent time with Devin. I think that Ohio State has set the tone in this recruitment right now as they battle Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU, to name a few others that he's high on. Just the tradition of Ohio State, the big game feel, the relationship with Coach Perry Eliano, Coach Walton, and Coach Day. Ohio State, getting him back to campus, they've set the tone for Devin Sanchez, one of the most coveted players at the position in America.
Spatula season. I'm bringing it up once again, Steve. I know you're bracing yourself for it. Thank you so much for joining us.